Have you noticed how everyone else seems to have moved on without you? They are landing the new jobs, entering the new chapters, announcing the good news. And you are still here, in the same place you were a year ago or 3 years ago, doing the same quiet work, waiting for something to finally shift. You have tried. You have prayed, or planned, or pushed, and still, the door stays closed. The months pass. The opportunities seem to open for other people and close for you. And late at night, a small, exhausted voice asks the question you would never say out loud. What if it never happens for me? What if I have been left behind? I want to tell you something tonight that goes against almost everything the world says about waiting. This long, silent, frustrating season you have been living through has not been wasted. It has not been life forgetting you, or passing you over, or punishing you for something you cannot name. According to Carl Jung, the deepest changes in a human life almost never begin in the outer world where everyone can see them. They begin underground, in the dark, in the quiet, long before anything visible ever moves. And what looks from the outside like delay, like being stuck, like falling behind, is very often the most important work of your entire life happening in a place no one, including you, can see. Jung wrote that the greatest problems of life can never really be solved. They can only be outgrown. And that is what this waiting has been doing to you, whether you knew it or not. It has not been holding you in place. It has been growing you past the person who could not yet hold what you were asking for. Because life does not give the new chapter to who you were. It gives it to who the waiting is quietly making you into. And the comparison is the cruelest part of it, is it not? It is not only that your own door stays shut, it is that you have to watch everyone else's swing open. The announcement, the celebration, the news that someone who started right when you did is now years ahead. Each one lands like a small verdict on your life. You are happy for them, truly, and underneath the happiness there is a quiet ache that whispers, "Why not me? Why not yet? What is wrong with me that everyone else gets to move while I stand still?" And slowly, without ever deciding to, you begin to believe the waiting is a judgment, that if you were good enough, or worthy enough, or simply enough, the door would have opened by now. I want to take that belief apart tonight, gently and completely, because it is not true, and it has been quietly breaking your heart for longer than you know. So tonight I want to walk you back through this long season and show you 8 signs that your waiting was never wasted. 8 quiet changes that only appear in people who have been made to wait, and to wait, and to wait some more. Some of them are already true of you, and you simply have not recognized them yet. And the 8th is the one that finally explains why the door has stayed shut this whole time, and what actually has to happen before it opens. Stay with me all the way to the end, because if this waiting has worn you down and made you wonder whether any of it meant anything, I think by the end you are going to see that the years you thought you lost were the years that were quietly saving you. The first sign is the hardest one to believe while you are still inside it. That the waiting itself has been a form of growth. We are taught to measure a life by what appears in it. The milestones, the achievements, the visible proof that we are moving forward. And so, a season where nothing appears feels like a season where nothing is happening. You look at the calendar, and it seems that a year has gone by, and you have nothing to show for it. No new title, no new relationship, no new chapter, nothing you could point to and say, "Look, I progressed." And because you cannot see the growth, you assume there was none. You conclude that you wasted the time, or that you are simply not moving as fast as everyone else, and quietly you begin to lose faith in yourself. But some of the most important growth a human being ever does leaves no trace on the outside at all. It does not show up as an achievement. It shows up in the way you learn to endure not knowing. in the way you keep getting up and doing the work when there is no reward in sight and no applause and no sign that it is leading anywhere. That is not nothing. That is one of the rarest and hardest things a person can develop, and it is being forged in you right now, in exactly the season you are calling wasted. Think of what a closed door actually does to a person. Over time, the first time your effort goes unanswered, it stings. The 10th time, it starts to shape you. You are forced, whether you want to be or not, to find a place to stand that is deeper than results. Because if your entire sense of worth depends on the outcome arriving, and the outcome does not arrive, you cannot survive the waiting. So slowly, painfully, you learn to draw your stability from somewhere the outer world cannot reach. You learn to keep preparing, keep adjusting, keep living, without needing an immediate result to prove that any of it matters. And that is not a small thing. That is the foundation a whole different kind of life is built on. Carl Jung saw waiting as part of the process he called individuation, the slow becoming of who you actually are. He understood that the ego wants life to run on a simple contract. Effort should produce results. Sacrifice should be rewarded. The time you put in should prove you made the right choice. And when life refuses to honor that contract, when you do everything right and the door still does not open, something in the old you begins to break down. But it is precisely in that breakdown, in that emptiness where the old rules no longer work, that you are forced to find a foundation deeper than achievement. You begin to understand that your worth was never actually tied to the outcome. And a person who learns that, truly learns it, in the dark, over years, is being prepared for something the striving person could never have held. There is a picture that captures this. Think of a photograph developing in a dark room. When the paper first goes into the chemical bath, nothing appears. The surface looks blank, empty, like nothing is happening at all. And if you pull it out too early, out of impatience, the image never fully forms. It stays faint, half-made, ruined. The waiting does not add anything to the photograph that was not already there. It simply gives the image that already exists the time it needs to rise to the surface and become clear. You are in the bath right now. It looks like nothing is happening, but something is developing in you that cannot be rushed and cannot be seen yet, and would be ruined if it arrived too soon. So before you write off these long, slow years as time you lost, consider that they may have been doing the one thing achievement never could, building the person underneath. And notice how alone this kind of growth makes you feel, because none of it can be shown to anyone. When a friend asks what you have been up to, you have nothing to report. No promotion, no move, no headline, just a year of quietly holding on. And you feel almost ashamed, as though you owe the world an achievement and have failed to produce one. But the person who endured a year of uncertainty without collapsing has done something far harder than the person who simply got lucky with an outcome. They have built the one thing no achievement can give you and no failure can take away. A self that does not need the outcome in order to keep going. You will not be able to point to it. There is no certificate for it, but it is the most valuable thing you own. And this season is where you earned it. So if you have been quietly grieving a year you feel you wasted, look again at what you actually did with it. You kept going when there was no reason to. You stayed honest when it would have been easier to grab any exit. You endured the not knowing. That is not an empty year. That is the year the foundation got poured. Underground, where foundations are always poured, out of sight, before anything is ever built on top. And that changes what the first real sign of your growth looks like. Because it will not be that you finally know where you are going. It will be something much stranger and quieter than that. The second sign is a reframe that changes everything once you see it. What is happening to you is not a delay. It is a change of direction. For most of your life, when something was not working, you assumed the answer was to try harder at the same thing. If the career was stuck, work more. If life felt empty, push more, achieve more, and surely it would eventually fill up. Every one of those responses rests on a hidden assumption that you are on the right road, and you simply have not gone far enough down it yet. That the problem is your speed, and so you press the accelerator again and again, and wonder why you are not arriving. But there comes a strange and disorienting moment when you realize the problem was never your speed. The problem is the road. What needs to change is not how fast you are walking, but the direction you are walking in. And this is exactly the moment that so many people misread as failure. The things that used to excite you quietly stop exciting you. The goals that once filled you with drive no longer create any urgency at all. You reach for the old motivation and find it gone. And because you cannot feel the old wanting anymore, you decide something is wrong with you. You think you are losing your ambition, losing your way, falling apart. Carl Jung would say that very feeling can be the sign that a real turning point has begun. You are not walking the wrong path. The person inside you has simply grown to the point where the old map is no longer big enough to guide you. The road you were on did not fail. You outgrew it. And a breakthrough of this kind does not hand you one more rung on the same ladder so you can climb a little higher. It quietly dissolves the ladder and sets a completely different path in front of you, one you could not have imagined from where you started. Picture a river that has run through the same bed for years. Everyone assumes the water will always follow that course, because it always has. And then, after one powerful season of rain, the river carves out an entirely new branch and changes direction. From the outside, it looks like the river went wrong, lost its way, broke its banks. But the river did not make a mistake. The landscape changed, and the water is simply finding the course that now fits it. You are not a person who lost their way. You are a river whose inner landscape has changed, and the old channel can no longer hold you, and something in you is quietly cutting a new path toward where you actually need to go. Consider a man in his late 40s who had worked every single weekend for over 10 years. He told himself he was doing it for his family, that the extra income was love, that if he just pushed a few more years he would finally have time for them. He was climbing the ladder as hard as he could. And then one day his son, grown now, said quietly that he had missed having dinner with his father more than he had ever wanted any of the things his father's money had bought. And the man went silent, because in that sentence the whole ladder collapsed. He did not need to climb faster. He needed a different direction entirely. He gave up the weekend work. He started taking evening walks with his wife, cooking dinner with his son, doing the ordinary things he had postponed for a decade. On paper, he had slowed down, sacrificed income, given up advancement. In truth, his life had, for the first time, started moving in the right direction. So if the old goals have gone quiet in you, do not be so quick to grieve them as a loss. That silence may not be your ambition dying. It may be your direction changing. The waiting stripped the shine off a road that was never going to take you home, so that you would finally be willing to look for a different one. And the moment you stop measuring this season by how far you have moved along the old road and start asking whether it is even the right road, everything begins to look different. And the hardest part of a change of direction is not the not knowing where to go. It is the fear of wasting everything you already put into the old road. You spent years building that career, that reputation, that version of your life, and a voice says, if you change direction now, all of that was for nothing. So you keep walking a road you have outgrown, not because it still fits, but because you cannot bear to think the miles behind you were wasted. But nothing you learned on the old road is lost when you change direction. You carry all of it with you. The man who worked every weekend did not waste those years. They taught him exactly what he did not want, and that knowledge was what finally turned him toward what he did. The road that brought you to the turning point was not a mistake. Even if it is not the road that takes you home, it got you here, to the place where you could finally see. So, do not let the fear of wasted years keep you walking a road that has already ended. The years were not wasted. They were the long approach to a door you could not have found any other way. And walking through it does not betray the journey that brought you to it. It completes it, which leads directly to the next sign, and to the first thing you will notice starting to fall away. The third sign is that things which once fit you perfectly begin, quietly, to stop fitting. What is old is closing, so the true self can finally emerge. It rarely arrives as a clear decision. It is subtler than that, and stranger. A goal that used to excite you starts to feel hollow. A role you once wore with pride begins to feel like a weight. The version of yourself that everyone relies on, the strong one, the capable one, the one who never lets anyone down, starts to feel less like who you are and more like a costume you are exhausted from wearing. Your outer life may look exactly the same, but somewhere underneath, you know you cannot keep living forever as a person shaped entirely by the past. And this feels like loss, so you resist it. You assume you are losing your direction, when what is actually happening is that you are losing your attachment to a direction that has already served its purpose. There is a difference, and it is everything. The emptiness you feel after an achievement that used to make you proud. The tiredness that comes from meeting the same expectations you have always met. The quiet sense of being a stranger inside the very life you worked so hard to build. These are not signs that you have failed. They are signs that a version of you is completing itself and getting ready to be set down. In Hermann Hesse's novel, Siddhartha leaves everything to search for truth. He becomes an ascetic, learns from every teacher he can find, disciplines himself completely, certain that the right method will finally deliver him. And the deeper he goes, the more clearly he sees that no one else's understanding can substitute for his own lived experience. Later, he swings the other way, into wealth and pleasure and the world, and becomes successful and worldly and increasingly lost to himself. Everything that once seemed full of promise leaves him emptier than before. And only when all the identities he had leaned on, the seeker, the ascetic, the rich man, finally stop holding him up, does Siddhartha stop trying to become some model of a person and start listening to what had been quietly moving in him the whole time. The old selves had to fall away before the real one could be heard. You know this without having read the book. You have become so accustomed to being strong, to being useful, to being the one who meets everyone's needs, that you feel valuable mainly when someone requires something of you. These ways of living earned you love once. They kept you safe, kept the peace, gave you a place. But you are starting to notice how much of your energy goes into maintaining a familiar image, and how little is left for the person actually living underneath it. Jung called that image the persona, the mask we design to make an impression on others and to hide our true nature from them. The persona is necessary. It helps us function among people. But if you spend your whole life protecting the mask, you can reach the end still having never let the person underneath it live. Here is the part that matters, because this stage frightens people. The true self does not arrive by you building an even more impressive version of the mask. It arrives, quietly, the moment you stop living only to preserve the image. It shows up the first time you honestly say what you need. The first time you set a boundary without a paragraph of apology attached. The first time you stop chasing something that only ever mattered in other people's eyes. Each of those small acts hands a little space back to the real you and lets it step, at last, into your actual life. And what is old is not being punished when it closes. It is being honored and completed and released so that you can stop guarding a face and finally live a life. This is like a cocoon that has finished its work. While the life inside is still forming, the cocoon protects it and gives its wings the time they need to take shape in the dark. But if the creature stays in there too long, the very shelter that once kept it safe becomes the thing that traps it and stops it from ever opening its wings. Your old ways of living are the same. They protected you once. They helped you survive a season when you did not yet have anything better. The sensitivity that kept the peace, the strength that got you through what you could not afford to feel, the achievement that made you believe you had worth. None of it was wrong. It simply cannot keep directing the whole of the life that is still ahead of you. And that is why an ending like this rarely brings pure relief. You may miss the version of yourself that people loved. You may doubt the new choices. You may fear that changing will disappoint the people who counted on the old you. That guilt is real, and it is worth naming, because it is often the last thing keeping the mask in place. But growth is not only staying loyal to what you once chose. Sometimes it is having the honesty to admit that a way of living which was once exactly right has quietly stopped fitting the person you have become. Setting it down is not betrayal. It is the cocoon finally opening. If you feel some old version of yourself quietly coming to an end right now, you might leave one word in the comments for it. Not a whole story. Just one word for what is closing, because naming it, even to strangers who understand, is part of how you let it go. And once the old begins to loosen its grip, you reach the next sign, where you discover you no longer need what you spent your whole life chasing. The fourth sign is a quiet revolution in where you get your sense of worth. You stop needing life to prove anything to you. For years, without ever quite admitting it, you were waiting for evidence. You told yourself that once the results came, once your efforts were finally recognized, once the outcome you longed for appeared, then you would know it had all been worth it. Then you could rest. Then you could believe in yourself. And so your whole sense of worth sat balanced on a result that had not yet arrived. And every day it did not arrive, you felt it teeter. You confused the reward with the growth. You believed the journey only counted if life eventually handed you the prize at the end of it. And somewhere in this long waiting, that begins to change. Not because you gave up, but because you grew tired of living in a permanent state of waiting to be validated. Carl Jung wrote that your vision becomes clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. He was not telling you to ignore the outer world. He was pointing at the trap of spending your life searching for the world to confirm your worth, and staying, because of it, forever asleep, forever waiting. You only wake up when you dare to turn inward and trust what you already know to be true, even when nothing outside you has confirmed it yet. There is even a way to see this in the brain. When a person lives on external approval, the reward system runs on a loop. Praise arrives, or a goal is reached, and there is a brief flash of satisfaction, and then it fades, and the system immediately starts hunting for the next hit. It is a treadmill. You are never full, because the satisfaction is built to fade, so you will chase the next one. But when your motivation slowly shifts from outside to inside, when you begin acting from what you genuinely value rather than from what will be applauded, the steadier, more reflective part of you begins to lead instead, and you become far less dependent on the world's signals. You can hold your worth even when your circumstances have not changed at all. Think of a woman who spent nearly 20 years running a small handmade craft shop. It never made her famous or wealthy, and for years, quietly, she was waiting for someone to notice what she had built, to acknowledge all those years of effort. Whenever she saw other people succeed on a larger scale, she wondered if her whole path had been a mistake. Then one afternoon she was helping a little girl make her very first craft, and she watched the child's face fill with joy as she finished it with her own hands. There was no award in that moment, no recognition, nothing the world would ever count, but something in the woman settled, for good. For the first time in 20 years, she realized she no longer needed life to repay her in proportion to what she had given. What she was doing was simply who she wanted to be, and from that day, she stopped counting what she had received and started fully living what she was able to give. That is the shift. And once it happens, the waiting loses its power to torment you, because you are no longer waiting for the outside world to tell you that you are enough. The proof you were waiting for turns out to be a proof you no longer need. What has changed is not that life finally validated you. It is that you stopped requiring it to. And a person who has stopped requiring it has quietly become unshakable in a way the striving, waiting version of them never could have been. You feel this shift most clearly in the small moments where you used to perform. The update you would once have shared just to be seen. The achievement you would have announced to collect the reaction. The quiet way you used to steer conversations toward your own accomplishments. Hungry for a little confirmation that you mattered. And one day you notice you simply do not need to anymore. Something good happens and you let it be good, privately, without rushing to broadcast it for approval. Someone misjudges you and you feel the old urge to defend and correct, and then you just let it go, because their verdict has stopped being the thing your worth depends on. It is a strange, spacious quiet. The quiet of a person who has stopped auditioning. If you have started to feel that quiet, do not mistake it for not caring or for giving up on your dreams. You still care. You still want. You have simply stopped needing the outcome to prove that you were right to try. And that is not a smaller life. It is a freer one. Because a person who acts from what they value, rather than from what will be applauded, can keep going through the longest, most unrecognized season there is, and never once run out of the fuel, because the fuel was never coming from outside them in the first place. But steadiness in your own worth is only part of it. The next sign is about steadiness in the storm itself, when everything around you is uncertain. The fifth sign is that a space begins to appear between what happens to you and how you react to it. Call it inner stability. The quiet ground that forms before your life ever visibly changes direction. Stability does not mean you stop feeling afraid, or disappointed, or unsettled. It means those feelings stop instantly deciding the whole story for you. A plan falls through, and it no longer means every effort you ever made was pointless. A rejection arrives, and it is no longer proof that you are not good enough. Between the thing that happens and the way you respond, a pause opens up, and in that pause, you can finally see that the feeling of this moment is not the truth about your future. The panic is not a prophecy. The disappointment is not a verdict. It is just weather, moving through. Consider a woman who had worked at the same company for nearly 8 years. The job was not bad. The people were familiar. The pay was fine. But for the last 2 years, she had been sitting in her car each morning before going in, because something in her had stopped growing, and she knew it. Every time she thought of leaving, fear flooded in. Fear she would not find anything better. Fear of starting over. Fear of what her family would think. And then the company restructured, and her position was simply eliminated, the choice taken out of her hands. She said that a few years earlier she would have taken that as proof that life was against her, and grabbed the first available job just to make the fear stop. But this time, though she was frightened and sad, she did not rush. She looked honestly at the skills she already had. She finished a course she had been putting off. She searched for a direction that actually fit her. A few months later, she found a better job. But what she was most proud of was not the job. It was that she had passed through a real upheaval without losing herself. What changed first for her was not her circumstances. It was the space she kept between the fear and the choice. Carl Jung understood that our strongest reactions do not come only from what is happening now. They come from old material inside us that the present moment happens to touch. A rejection today can wake an old feeling of abandonment. A failure now can summon an ancient belief that we are not capable. A slow season can awaken the buried fear that life has forgotten us. When we do not see this, we mistake the reaction for the truth and let it choose our next move. Jung put it starkly. When an inner situation is not made conscious, he wrote, it appears outside us as fate. The unrecognized fear does not only haunt you, it quietly steers you, again and again, back to the same familiar choices, and then convinces you that this repeating pattern is simply your destiny. There is a physical truth underneath this. When you react the same way for years, the brain lays down deep, well-worn pathways for that reaction, so it fires almost automatically the moment a familiar trigger appears. But those pathways are not permanent. The brain keeps changing all your life. Every single time you meet a familiar situation and manage to respond in a new way, you weaken the old wiring a little and strengthen the new. It rarely happens all at once, but over time, a reaction that once felt as fixed as your own name can quietly lose its grip, and a steadier one can take its place. That is not only spiritual language. That is how you are actually built. You are not stuck with the person the old fear made you. So stability is not becoming so strong that nothing ever shakes you. It is learning to recognize, in the moment, that this is only a fear, not a forecast. This is an old memory being touched, not the whole of reality repeating. The feeling stays, but a gap opens between the feeling and the decision, and in that gap you stop automatically walking the old road. And here is why this matters so much for your waiting. A good opportunity does not only need to arrive at the right time, it needs to arrive to a person stable enough not to sabotage it out of self-doubt, not to abandon it the moment it gets hard, not to trade a real future for the first thing that quiets the fear. Some good things came close to you once, and the person you were then was too frightened to recognize them, or too impatient to keep them. The waiting has been building the one who can. There is an image that captures what an unsteady inner world does to you. Think of a compass placed too close to a magnet. The needle still swings, still looks like it is pointing somewhere, but an invisible force has pulled it off true north. Old fear works exactly like that magnet. It does not stop you from moving. It quietly bends your direction, so that again and again you choose the familiar road, the safe retreat, the smaller life, even when something in you knows it does not lead where you actually want to go. And because the pull is invisible, you call the result your fate, when it was really just the magnet the whole time. The moment you can see what has been pulling the needle, you can finally begin to correct for it and steer by something truer. So do not be discouraged if the fear is still there. Stability was never the absence of fear. It is the space you learn to keep between the fear and the choice, wide enough that the old magnet no longer decides your direction for you. The fear can be present, loud even, and you can still, calmly, choose the road that is actually yours. That gap is the whole victory, and it is being built in you right now. In every hard moment of this waiting where you feel the pull of the old panic and do not simply obey it, which raises the question that torments almost everyone in a slow season. Why does everyone else seem so far ahead? The sixth sign is that you stop using everyone else's timeline to judge your own. You make peace with the fact that you have your own rhythm of growth. This is one of the deepest wounds of waiting. You look around and it seems that everyone else has already arrived. They are further along, more settled, more successful, moving from milestone to milestone while you stand in the same place. and it is almost impossible not to read their pace as a verdict on yours. You conclude that you are too slow, that you chose wrong, that you missed some window everyone else walked through. The comparison is relentless, and it turns an already hard season into proof of your own failure. In the old story of Martha and Mary, a guest comes to their home. Martha throws herself into serving, rushing to prepare everything, doing all the visible work. Mary simply sits and listens. And Martha, watching her sister do nothing while she does everything, becomes upset and complains. But the response she receives is gentle and surprising. Martha is not condemned. Her devotion is real. She is only reminded that she is anxious about many things, while Mary has chosen what she needs for this moment. One was learning through doing. The other needed to be still and listen. They stood before the same moment and did not need to respond in the same way. What Martha needed to see was not that she had to become Mary, but that another person's path did not have to look like hers in order to be right. We forget this constantly. The person always moving assumes the person who has slowed is not trying. The one who found stability early cannot understand why someone else is still searching. The one still searching looks at everyone's certainty and feels hopelessly behind. But we only ever see where a person is standing now. We never see everything they walked through to get there, or what is quietly waiting to break in their life just off screen. And in our fear of being slower than others, we make painful choices. We take the wrong job because everyone else has one. We enter a relationship before we are ready because it looks like the next milestone. We chase a version of success that was never even ours. We tell ourselves we are running toward the future, when often we are only running from the feeling of being left behind. Carl Jung saw individuation as the process by which each person becomes the specific individual they have it in them to become. It does not march everyone toward the same template, or ask everyone to learn the same lesson at the same time. Each of us carries a different history, different wounds, different gifts, different inner work. So a thing one person grasps at 20 might take another person until 50 to fully live. Jung put it simply, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. What frees one person will lead you further from yourself. Growth is not learning to live like someone else. It is finding the way of living that actually fits the person you are underneath. Picture a garden full of different plants. Some bloom in early spring. Some bear fruit only after the summer has passed. Some must stand through many seasons of rain before they so much as sprout. No one walks through that garden scolding the late bloomer for not flowering like the one beside it. Each has its own timing written into its nature. You are no different. What tortures you is not that you are growing too slowly. It is that you keep demanding that you bloom in someone else's season. When you finally let that go, another person's success stops being evidence of your failure. You can be genuinely glad for them without using their life to indict your own. You stop rushing to bloom on someone else's schedule, and you start quietly tending roots that no one can see yet. And your journey stops being measured by how fast you moved, and starts being measured by how close you are getting to your actual self. And let me be honest about what this does not mean, because it is easy to twist. Respecting your own rhythm is not the same as standing still and calling your avoidance patience. It does not mean giving up or waiting passively for life to hand you something while you do nothing. You still act. You still take the small steps toward what you believe is right. You still show up. The difference is that you stop forcing a result just to prove you are not slower than everyone else. You move at the pace that is actually yours, which is not the pace of laziness and not the pace of panic, but the pace of something growing properly in its own time. So if a quiet voice is accusing you of being behind, ask where the ruler it is using even came from. It is almost always borrowed from someone whose life, whose history, whose wounds are nothing like yours. You were never meant to bloom in their season. Comparison will always find someone ahead of you and make their timeline feel like the correct one, and it will rob you of a life that is unfolding exactly as it should, simply because it is not unfolding like theirs. The moment you set their ruler down, you can finally feel your own roots growing, in the dark, on schedule, right on time for a season only you were made for. If you have ever rushed towards something only because you saw someone else get there first, you might leave one word below for what you have been chasing out of that fear. Naming it is how you loosen its grip. And once you stop racing everyone else, the very meaning of what has happened to you begins, quietly, to change. The seventh sign is subtle, and it changes everything without changing a single external fact. The same experience stops meaning the same thing to you. Life will still bring things that unfold differently from what you hoped. There will still be days when everything seems to move against you. But somewhere in this long season, a quiet change has taken place in the one who receives it. You no longer respond to every setback the way you once did. Instead of instantly treating a hard event as the end of the road, or as proof that you are on the wrong path, you give it a moment of stillness. You observe, you listen, you let yourself feel it before you decide what it means. And that pause makes all the difference, because very often the first thing that changes is not the event at all. It is the meaning you slowly choose to give it. Carl Jung wrote that the least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it. For Jung, meaning was not something you stumbled upon in the wreckage. It was something you gradually made through the long work of your own maturing. Two people can walk through the exact same storm. One comes out seeing only loss. The other comes out having noticed something they were never quiet enough to see when the skies were clear. Same storm, two different lives. And what separated them was not the weather. It was the meaning each one made of it. No life shows this more starkly than Viktor Frankl's. Imprisoned in the Nazi concentration camps, he endured conditions almost no one can imagine. He could not change his circumstances. He could not know if he would survive the day. And in a place that seemed to hold nothing but despair, Frankl realized there was one thing that could never be taken from a human being: the freedom to choose how to understand what was happening to them. After the war, that single realization became the foundation of an entire school of psychology, one that puts meaning at the very center of healing. What saved Frankl was not that the suffering stopped, it was that he refused to let the suffering be the only voice deciding what his life meant. Think of standing at a window after the rain. If you fix your eyes on the drops clinging to the glass, the whole world beyond looks blurred and broken. But shift your focus just slightly, past the glass, to the sky, and you realize the drops were never hiding anything. They were simply what your attention was stuck on. The circumstances have not changed at all, but with the smallest shift in where you look, what you see becomes completely different. That is what has been happening in you, slowly, through all this waiting. Your focus has been moving off the raindrops. And so, without deciding to, you stop asking the question that keeps a person trapped. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Because that question fixes all your attention on the pain and sends your mind in endless circles around what has already happened. Instead, you begin to ask a different question. What is this helping me see that I could not see before? They sound almost the same, those two questions, but they open two entirely different paths. One keeps you imprisoned inside the event. The other quietly leads you toward the meaning taking shape within it. Nothing outside you has changed, but the person receiving your life has, and that changes your whole life. And this is not about forcing a bright meaning onto something that genuinely hurt. It is not pretending the loss was secretly a gift, or slapping a hopeful caption over real pain. Carl Jung wrote that we cannot change anything until we accept it. Acceptance comes first, and it is harder than positivity. It means looking directly at what happened, without rushing to fix it or explain it away, and letting it be exactly as heavy as it is. Only from that honest ground does real meaning ever grow. The person who forces the meaning too early gets a shallow comfort that collapses under the next hard day. The person who can sit with the thing as it truly is and wait finds a meaning that actually holds, because it was not invented to escape the pain. It was discovered by going through it. So if you cannot yet find the meaning in what you have lived through, do not force it, and do not take its absence as proof there is none. Some meanings only become visible from further down the road, when you finally have the distance to look back and see what that season was quietly building in you. You do not have to have it figured out tonight. You only have to stay open and honest and unwilling to let the pain be the only voice that gets to decide what your life means. Which brings us, finally, to the sign that explains the waiting itself. The 8th sign is the one that makes sense of all the others. You begin to understand that the door opens only when you are ready to walk through it without losing yourself. For years you believed the opposite. You believed that once the opportunity appeared, you would automatically know what to do. That once the right person arrived, you would know how to love them. That once you were handed the better position, confidence would follow. That the moment life finally opened a clear direction, all your inner uncertainty would simply dissolve. But new circumstances do not create a new person. If the old fears and the old patterns are still running underneath, you can walk through a brand new door and quietly relive the same old story on the other side of it. Carl Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You do not become ready by picturing a beautiful future. Someone who has not faced their fear of rejection will keep ending up in places where they must prove their worth. Someone who has not understood their fear of being alone will cling to any relationship that appears. The door may be new, but if the old pattern is still leading, the result will be painfully familiar. And this is exactly why some opportunities only become true turning points after a person has been made to wait long enough to become someone who can actually hold them. Consider Harland Sanders, the man behind the fried chicken empire. Before any of it, he worked a long string of jobs: railway worker, insurance salesman. He ran a gas station and started cooking for the travelers who stopped there, and slowly built that into a small restaurant and refined his recipe over years. And then a new highway rerouted the traffic away. The customers vanished, and he was forced to sell. At an age when most people are winding down, he began driving from restaurant to restaurant, offering his recipe, and from there the whole thing finally grew into what the world now knows. It is tempting to read his story as simply proof that success can come late, but the deeper truth is about who he had become before the real opportunity arrived. All those years of serving travelers taught him what people actually loved. All those changes of job built his ability to adapt. Running a business taught him how business works. So when the old door closed, he did not walk away empty. He carried a lifetime of preparation with him. The waiting had built the man who could hold the success. There is a science to this too. Psychologists talk about self-efficacy, the built-up belief that you are capable of handling what comes, and it is not manufactured by encouragement. It is assembled, slowly, out of every single time you faced a difficulty, adjusted, and kept going. Every time you finished what needed finishing even when the inspiration was gone. Every time you turned down the attractive thing that did not fit your direction. Every time one failure stopped being the end of your entire ability. Each of those small moments in the waiting was quietly building the capacity that will keep you standing when what you truly want finally arrives. So the challenges before the turning point were not blocking your path. They were preparing the one who walks it. So look honestly at what you want most right now, and ask a different question than the one you have been asking. Not, why has it not come yet? But, if it arrived tomorrow, would I be ready to live with it and not lose myself? That is what the waiting has been answering this whole time. The door does not stay closed because life forgot you or because you were not good enough. It stays closed until you have become someone who can walk through it and stay standing on the other side. And one day it opens, and you do not lunge at it out of fear of losing it, and you do not shrink from it believing you are unworthy. You simply see clearly what it is, understand what it asks, and calmly walk through, and you realize the waiting was never the absence of your life. Think of a ship before it leaves the harbor. The sea can be calm, the direction clear, the sails ready to catch the wind. But if the hull itself is not sound, if the body of the ship is not strong enough to hold together in open water, then setting out toward the new land is not a blessing. It is how the ship sinks halfway there. Opportunities are the same. It is not enough for them to appear. You have to be built strongly enough to carry the weight, the responsibility, the uncertainty they bring, without breaking apart under them. And the waiting, all this frustrating time in the harbor while other ships sailed, has been the work being done on your hull. Every hard thing you endured was another plank made sound, so that when you finally set out, you will not sink. So when the fear comes that the door will never open, try turning the question around. Not, why is it taking so long? But, what is still being made strong in me before I could hold what I am asking for? That question turns the waiting from a punishment into a preparation, which is what it always was. The door is not sealed against you out of cruelty. It is held, gently, until the ship is ready for the sea. And a ship made ready this slowly, this thoroughly, is a ship built to survive the whole voyage, not just the launch. It was your life, quietly getting you ready. So, what do you actually do with a season of waiting, while you are still inside it, still not knowing when or whether the door will open? You do not force it. That is the first and hardest thing, because everything in you wants to seize control, to gather enough certainty and enough answers to finally feel safe. But there is an old wisdom about this that is worth sitting with. In the story of manna in the wilderness, food appeared each morning, and the people were told to gather only enough for that day, and some, afraid there would not be enough for tomorrow, tried to store extra. By the next morning, everything they had hoarded had spoiled. It is a piercing lesson about the human need to hold on. When we do not trust what has not yet arrived, we try to drag tomorrow into today. We try to gather enough answers, enough certainty, enough signs to finally feel secure. And the paradox is that what we grip most tightly out of fear is often the first thing to rot in our hands. Think of holding a fistful of sand. The harder you squeeze, the faster it runs through your fingers. Hold your hand open, and the sand simply stays. Some seasons of your life do not ask you to try harder. They ask you to strive a little less. And letting go, here, does not mean giving up, or abandoning your responsibilities, or going numb to your life. Giving up is paralysis. Letting go is freedom. The freedom to respond to your life as it actually is. Instead of forcing it to match the script in your head, you stop demanding that an emotion vanish on command. You stop insisting that a confusing season instantly become clear. You stop treating slowness as a problem to be fixed, and as that pressure eases, the quiet movements that were always happening underneath the tension finally get room to show themselves. And notice that this kind of letting go is not the same as doing nothing. There is a passive waiting that is really just avoidance in disguise, sitting still, hoping, refusing to prepare, and calling it patience or faith. And there is an active waiting, which is something else entirely. It keeps working, it keeps learning, it keeps tending the things that can be tended, while loosening its grip on the timing it cannot control. A farmer does not make the seed grow faster by staring at the soil, but he does not abandon the field either. He prepares the ground, he waters, he pulls the weeds, and then he waits, having done his part, and trusts the rest to a process far older than himself. That is the exact posture this season is asking of you. Not the collapse of giving up, not the white-knuckle grip of trying to force the harvest before its time. The steady, open-handed work of preparing well, and then letting the timing be what it is. You do what is yours to do, and you release what was never yours to control, and in that specific balance, a strange peace becomes possible even before anything has changed. So the practice is smaller and gentler than you would think. When the fear rises that you are being left behind, you can name it quietly. This is fear. It is not a prophecy. When the urge comes to grab the first thing that will make the uncertainty stop, you can feel it and not obey it. When you catch yourself measuring your life against someone else's pace, you can set their ruler down. And each day, instead of demanding the whole answer at once, you can simply ask what this one day is showing you. A slightly different thought, a new feeling, a small, honest sense of what fits you and what does not. You do not have to assemble all of it into a finished answer tonight. The meaning reveals itself the way the photograph develops, gradually, and only to the one patient enough not to pull it out of the bath too soon. Try this on the evenings when the waiting feels heaviest. Instead of asking the question that tortures you, when will it finally come? Ask a smaller and kinder one. What did this one day give me? Not the whole answer, just one thing. A conversation that went a little differently than it would have a year ago. A fear you felt and did not obey. A moment you stayed steady where you once would have come apart. A small, honest sense of what fits you and what does not. Write it down, if that helps. Because the growth of this season is almost invisible day to day, and the only way to see it at all is to catch it in these small pieces, one evening at a time. String enough of those evenings together and one day you will look up and realize you have quietly become a different person, so gradually you never once saw it happening. That is how this kind of change always arrives. Not in a single lightning strike, in 1,000 quiet evenings, each one adding a little more to the person you are slowly, invisibly becoming. And there is one question worth carrying with you through the whole of it. Not, when will it finally come? But, who am I becoming while I wait? Because that is the real work of this season, and it is the only part of it that is actually in your hands. You cannot force the door, but you can become the person who is ready when it opens, and that becoming is not wasted time. It is the most important thing you will ever do. So if you have felt yourself somewhere in these 8 signs, let this be what you carry out of here tonight. The waiting was never wasted. The long, silent, discouraging season you have been so desperate to get out of has not been life passing you by. It has been life preparing you, in the only way that lasts, in the dark, underground, where nothing shows until it is ready. You were not falling behind, you were being made ready. And what you have been waiting for has, in its own quiet way, been waiting for you too. Waiting for you to become someone who could hold it. And when the door finally does open, and one day, in some form, it will, though perhaps not the exact form you first pictured, you are going to understand something you cannot see yet from where you stand tonight. That you could not have held this before. That the version of you from 3 years ago would have gripped it too tightly, or run from it in fear, or lost themselves completely inside it. And that all of this waiting, all of this time you were so sure you were being passed over and left behind, was the exact amount of time it took to make you into someone who could finally receive it and stay whole. You will not resent the wait then. You will understand it. You may even be grateful for it, which is the strangest thing of all. So be gentle with yourself in the meantime. Give yourself the patience you would give a seed in winter, which is doing the most important work of its life, precisely when it looks like it is doing nothing at all. You do not need to rush. You do not need to force. You do not need to bloom in anyone else's season. You only need to keep tending the roots no one can see yet, and to trust that a life shaped this slowly and this deeply is being built to last. And if this waiting has worn you down, and you needed to hear tonight that it meant something, then leave one word in the comments below for where you are right now. It might be waiting. It might be tired. It might be ready. Whatever is truest for you. Because there are more of us in this quiet season than you could ever guess. Each one convinced they are the only ones still standing outside a closed door. You are not alone out here. And if these words reach something in you, stay close, subscribe, and walk the rest of this with us, one quiet season at a time. This is a channel for exactly this. The slow, unseen, sacred work of becoming who you were always meant to be in the time it actually takes. Take care of yourself. Be gentle with the person you are becoming, and gentler still with the person you have been through all this waiting. And whenever the waiting gets long and dark, come back and sit here again, because there will always be another word of company waiting for you here. I will see you in the next one.